Welcome! In this tutorial, we'll guide you through the process of making our signature wrap items, including tops and dresses with various sleeve options. Below, you'll find a link to the pattern, a detailed guide with all instructions, and other important resources to assist you. Let's get started. Let's begin by cutting the fabric. Before cutting your fabric, fold it in half lengthwise so that the selvages, the finished edges of the fabric, align. Make sure the right sides of the fabric are facing each other. Lay the pattern on the fabric like you see on this image, taking care to align the pattern's fold lines with the fabric's fold. For cutting, I recommend using an electric scissor for smoothness and pattern weights to prevent the pattern from shifting, a more effective method than using pins. Pay special attention to the grain lines on the pattern, typically indicated by long lines ending in arrows. These grain lines should run parallel to the selvage, ensuring that the fabric maintains its natural drape. When cutting the fabric, be mindful of the notches, small marks indicated by scissors on the pattern. Transfer them onto the fabric by making small nicks, about 2 to 3 millimeters deep. This size is sufficient for visibility without damaging the fabric, providing a clear guide for later stages of garment assembly. To transform the top into a dress, adjust the length of the bottom, front, and back pieces. For a mini dress, extend them by 40 centimeters. Choose a 70 centimeters extension for a midi dress, and for a maxi dress, increase the length by 90 centimeters. This ensures the dress falls correctly for your desired style. Now, proceed to cut the interfacing. Begin by folding the interfacing lengthwise, ensuring that the selvages, these are the neatly finished edges of the interfacing, are perfectly aligned. Next, position the facing pieces on top of the interfacing, as demonstrated in the provided image. Let's move on to crafting the straps. Take one short strap and iron both long edges 1 centimeter inward, toward the fabric's wrong side. Iron one short end 1 centimeter inward, again toward the wrong side. Trim the corners of the short side so they don't stick out. Fold the strap in half lengthwise and iron it. Repeat this process for the long strap. Secure the straps by sewing along both the short and long edges, maintaining a 2 mm distance from the edge. Prepare the unfinished edges of both straps. Start by measuring 1 centimeter from the edge along the longer side of each strap, aligning your starting point with the existing stitch line. Next, from this marked point, precisely cut each strap diagonally, extending the cut to the opposite tip on the other long side of the strap. We are going to proceed with the top. Begin with the front pieces of the top. Locate the 2 cuts at the bottom. Align these cuts by folding them, ensuring the right sides of the fabric are facing each other. Secure this alignment by inserting a pin at the fold. Measure 12 centimeters up from this pin and place another pin horizontally at that point. Ensure both top pieces have opposite orientations. Use tailor's chalk to draw a diagonal line connecting the 2 pins. Remove the top pin. Stitch along the line you've drawn, remembering to backstitch at both the start and finish. Take the front pieces and lay them over the back piece, ensuring right sides are facing each other. Pin along the right side and shoulders. Stitch the right side and shoulders together with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. Use a seam guide to achieve a perfectly straight stitch. Finish with an overlock stitch. Overlock the left sides of the front and back pieces separately. Place them on top of each other. From the bottom, measure up 1 centimeter and place a pin horizontally. Position the strap above it and insert another pin at the strap's top, ensuring there's a gap between the pins that's equal to the strap's width. Stitch the sides together using a 1 cm seam allowance, stopping at the first pin. Don't forget to backstitch. Continue stitching after the second pin, ensuring you leave a gap between the 2 pins. Press the left seam open, ensuring it lays flat. Stitch around the gap. First, choose the shorter strap, which will be affixed to the front section of your project. Specifically, it should be attached to the side with a gap in the side seam. Place the strap along the curved edge of the top, ensuring the stitched edge of the strap faces downwards. Position it 1 cm above the bottom edge of the top. Once aligned correctly, secure the strap in place with pins. Repeat the process on the other side with the long strap. Sew the straps onto the top, maintaining a seam allowance of 0.5 cm. Your interfacing pieces feature a soft side and an adhesive side. Position these interfacing pieces onto your facing pieces in such a way that the adhesive side of the interfacing is in contact with the wrong side of the fabric of your facing pieces. Once properly aligned, press them together with an iron to bond them securely. For the front pieces, place the pattern on top to check if the fabric has stretched. If you find that the fabric has indeed stretched, trim it back to match the pattern's dimensions. Pin the back facing to the front facing along the shoulder seams, ensuring that the front pieces are correctly oriented with their curves facing inward. Stitch with a seam allowance of 1 cm. Iron the seams open and flat, and cut of the edges. Finish the outside edge of the facing with an overlock stitch. Pin the facing to the top, ensuring that the right sides of both fabrics are facing each other and that the shoulder seams align. Stitch with a seam allowance of 1 cm. Fold the seam over to the side of the facing and iron. Secure the seam by stitching along the edge of the facing, keeping your stitches approximately 1 mm away from the existing seam line. Trim away any excess fabric along the seam. Fold the facing over and iron. Sew a 1 cm reinforcement stitch directly on the shoulder seam line to ensure the facing remains in place. Let's create the skirt. Align the front pieces with the back pieces by matching their diagonal sides, ensuring the right sides of the fabric face each other. Sew along both sides, joining the panels together. Once stitched, reinforce these seams with an overlock stitch for a neat and durable finish. Sew a continuous stitch along the skirt's bottom edge, keeping a 1 cm seam allowance for consistency. Fold the hem over by 1 cm and press it with an iron, using the 1 cm stitch line as a guide to ensure evenness. Then fold it over once more by the same amount. Do the same for both sides of the skirt. To refine the corners of the skirt, observe the intersection of the crease lines. Draw a line at the center point between the 2 intersecting creases, following the red guide in the picture. Then, neatly cut along this line to remove the excess fabric, ensuring a more precise and professional corner finish. To neatly finish the skirt's corner, first fold it over by 1 cm and press firmly with an iron. Then, fold the fabric back to its original position and iron again for a crisp, well-defined edge. On to the sleeves with ruffles. First, overlock the sleeve hems for a clean edge. Next, fold them at the notches to the fabric's wrong side and press flat with an iron. Fold the bottom open again. Bring the sides of the seams together with the right sides of the fabric facing inward. Pin in place. Sew along this seam with a 1 cm seam allowance, then overlock to encase the raw edge. Refold the hem into place. Detach your sewing machine's free arm and slip the sleeve over it. Sew around, following the previous overlock line, but leave a 1 cm gap unstitched. Stitch a second line around the sleeve, positioned 1.5 centimeters from the first. This time, sew it all the way around. Measure the elastic by wrapping it around your wrist and adding 7 centimeters. For short sleeves, follow a similar measurement process, but focus on the circumference of your arm just above the elbow. Attach a safety pin and thread it through the sleeve. Knot the ends and close the gap in the sleeve with a stitch. Let's explore the process of crafting a sleeve without ruffle. Sew a continuous stitch along the sleeve's bottom edge, keeping a 1 cm seam allowance. Fold the hem over by 1 cm to the wrong side of the fabric and press it with an iron, using the 1 cm stitch line as a guide to ensure evenness. Then fold it over once more by the same amount. Do the same for the other sleeve. Fold the bottom open again and bring the sides of seams together with the right sides of the fabric facing inward. Pin in place. Sew along this seam with a 1 cm allowance, then overlock to encase the raw edge. Fold over the bottom again. Remove the arm of your sewing machine. Put the bottom of the sleeves around the sewing machine. Stitch around the hem of the sleeve with a 8 mm seam allowance. Stitch around the hem of the sleeve with a 0.8 mm seam allowance. Leave 1 cm open. Measure the elastic by wrapping it around your wrist and adding 7 centimeters. For short sleeves, follow a similar measurement process, but focus on the circumference of your arm just above the elbow. Now we are going to attach the sleeves. Place ruffle stitches in between the ruffle notches of the sleeve. You make a ruffle stitch by putting the stitch length to the biggest size. First, stitch a ruffle seam precisely 5 mm from the edge of the sleeve. Remember not to backstitch at either the beginning or the end of this seam. Keep the thread tails long at both ends for easy adjustment later. Then, carefully add another seam, this time positioning it 8 mm from the edge, close to the first stitch. Your stitches have 2 top threads and 2 bottom threads. Hold the top threads and gently pull to create even ruffles. Do the same on the other side until the ruffles are evenly divided. Lay the top with its inside facing up. Then, flip the sleeve so the outside is showing. Insert the sleeve into the armhole, making sure the low notch is positioned at the front of the top. If the notch is not in the correct position, set aside the current sleeve and repeat the process with the other sleeve. Pin the sleeve in place, starting at the side seam of the shirt that should align with side seam of the sleeve. Work your way up to the start of the ruffle stitch on both sides. Now, double-check that the armhole's circumference aligns with the ruffled edge of the sleeve. If the sleeve appears longer, create more ruffles. Conversely, if the sleeve is shorter, gently pull the ruffles to reduce them. Ensure that the amount of ruffles is the same on both sides of the shoulder seam. Pin it together. For the ruffled sections, it's helpful to insert the pins horizontally. This way, you can sew over them without having to remove them, which helps in keeping the ruffles in place. Stitch along the pin line with a 1 cm seam allowance to secure the sleeve to the armhole. As you reach the ruffled sections, ensure your stitch line is just inside the ruffle stitches to keep them concealed. Use an overlock stitch to neatly finish the raw edges, providing a professional look and preventing fraying. Follow the same steps for attaching the other sleeve. Now we are going to attach the top to the skirt. Place the top over the skirt, ensuring that the bottom edge of the top aligns with the top edge of the skirt. The right sides of both pieces should face each other. Align the side seams and align the bottom edge of the top with the first crease on the skirt created by ironing. Ensure that the darts on the top are folded towards the back side of the garment. Sew them together using a 1 cm seam allowance, then finish the seam with an overlock stitch for neatness. First, neatly fold the overlock stitch downwards. Next, carefully align the creases on the skirt and pin them in place. Begin stitching, maintaining a consistent seam allowance of 8 mm. Start from one side of the skirt, continue smoothly around the bottom hem, and finish at the other side.